because obviously it's the most complex. And by this point now we're moving on to intermediate level particle flows, which is something I wanted to show obviously at the end of this DVD, so that in the future DVDs where we look at more complex flows, especially when we start looking at scripting, we really need to start pushing it to a new level now in terms of the complexity. I think hopefully through this DVD you see sort of gradual ramping up in complexity, and as I said, this one pretty much is the most complex, and as I said, it's pretty much an intermediate level effect. But as I said, it's a bit of a grey line really, where intermediate and fundamentals begin and end. So you can just look at this either as a difficult fundamental, or it's a very easy intermediate, whatever. So let's open a particle view. I'll just maximize it because it's quite a big flow. So let's have a look at what we actually have here. Well, in this case, you can see, if I pan around, this is what I would call a sort of, it's sort of like a grand flow. We're not using multiple particle flows to do each different effect, although of course you could. What I wanted was for the raindrops to come down and for each individual part of our effect to be built on collisions and so forth. So it's very, very procedural. You can literally put new geometry into the scene and the rain will splash on it and dribble down it and whatever. So in the first event we birth particles from -50 to 200. The -50 birth range is obviously there as a run-up. That's going to give our particles 50 frames to fall down from above and to splash on the ground. So that's basically what that does. We've got a run-up on our particles, where over that period we're emitting 15,000 raindrops, so obviously it's quite a lot. Then we have our particles affected by various forces. We're affected by wind, gravity and drag. These just give out obviously a naturalistic kind of effect. We've got a position, which is based on the icon. If I go into perspective view, this is the position of the icon here. So basically our raindrops fall down from here. We've got a speed along the icon arrow. That's based on the icon, obviously. So our rain has an initial speed when it's emitted. We're using shape instance, and that's using our mesh raindrop, which I showed you earlier. A static material, which is raindrop, which is rain, as actually I should say. We're using a scale, and that's just to override the size of our raindrop. We bring it in at a certain scale. You can see I'm using a 50% scale here with a variation of 20. But what I'm also doing to give the impression that the raindrop's actually falling at a certain speed is I'm actually scaling it along one of its axes as well. So we've given it a scale of 300 along its x-axis. That just gives it a sort of elongated look to make it look like it's going faster. Rotation, we're using speed space, so that when we scale along that axis then aligns with the direction that the raindrop is falling in. And then we've got two collisions. So basically our raindrop's falling down, it's stretching, and it's aligning itself along the direction of travel. And we're looking for two kinds of collision. The first collision is with the ground plane here, or with the pedestal here. These are the two simplest collisions really. And from this point we're going to branch off our flow. Either our raindrops come down and strike the ground or the pedestal, or they strike the ogre statue. If it strikes the ground it does one kind of thing. If it strikes the ogre statue then it does another kind of thing. So let's have a look at those two main branches now. We'll look at the simplest one first, which is actually collisions with the ground. So if I just open this up a bit, you can see, just move this over here slightly. There you go. So you can see we've got collisions with the ground, deflect the ground, and the pedestal. And we've got collisions with the ogre. So when the particles collide with the ground, they get sent out through this wire down to this event here. And this event is called floor splash particles. And this is basically discrete particles that actually splash out from the point of impact. You can see I've actually got these switches in here as per usual, and these are just to turn off different branches of our flow. This is great doing debugging, and it's very, very useful technique. As I said, just turning off the event doesn't have the same effect, because that will just turn off this event and the particles will be sent on to the following events to be acted upon, and that isn't really what you want. You want them to be completely switched off. So this delete operator, which I've renamed to turn on to switch off, the branch, that just